Sunshine City. This bustling shopping complex in Tokyo was once the site of Tokyo Detention Center, Sugamo Prison. Here, from 1937 to 1945, thought criminals, critics of Imperial Japan, were imprisoned. Among those imprisoned were the founders of the Soka Gakkai, the forerunner of today's Soka Gakkai. This community-based movement, rooted in Nichiren Buddhism, became a thorn in the side of Imperial Japan. Its founder, Tsunesaburo Makiguchi, rejected the state's demands, and for this he was branded a traitor. We shine light on the genesis of the Soka Gakkai, tracing how a movement begun by a humble schoolteacher became a dire threat in the eyes of militarist Japan. A story of hope, born in the darkest time. Born in 1871, Tsunesaburo Makiguchi came of age and became a teacher in an era when Western nations were in a race to colonize the world.
Makiguchi lived through a time of really hard-to-imagine transformation. He was born into a non-modern society that was just beginning to feel the impacts of industrialization.
やっぱり日本にとって当時一番重要な課題というのは、次々と押し寄せてくる欧米の列強に対していかにして独立を保持することができるか、日本を欧米並みの近代国家に引き上げるか。近代国家になるためには全ての国民を直接その国家に結びつけるようなシステムができなければいけない。
In 1868, the shogun, or military ruler, and the feudal order he ruled over were overturned by a coalition of ambitious young samurai. To legitimize their new regime, they elevated the emperor as the sovereign and spiritual pillar of modern Japan.
憲法では天皇というのは神聖にして犯すべからずということがその明記されるわけですね。そしてそれをそのさまざまな教育を通して人々の間に浸透させていくという、下からその天皇をその崇拝するようなそういう空気を作っていかなければいけない。
In 1890, the imperial rescript on education is adopted. People would kind of hear this repeated in this very ceremonial situation a couple times a year, that the purpose of education is to instill patriotism, to instill, more than anything, loyalty to the emperor.
Such was the state of Japanese education when Tsunesaburo Makiguchi began his teaching career in Hokkaido. Makiguchi eventually became the principal of an elementary school in Tokyo and became known for his unique approach to education.
He was very successful, by all accounts. He was really trying to get young children to start their lives by thinking carefully and critically about the world around them. He would take them to these different sites, for example, a dam where hydroelectric power is being generated, and start thinking about, how do I relate to this environment? What is my role in society?
Makiguchi's approach to teaching stood in clear opposition to the state's rigid, hierarchical education system, which aimed to instill obedience and patriotism.
The way he interacted with the students was very humane. He instituted night classes for students whose economic conditions required that they work during the day. He instituted a school lunch program. He would leave them in the custodial staff room so that students could go in and pick it up without having to have their poverty on display for the rest of the school. He refused to compromise his belief that all children are equal and that they all deserve equal treatment.
Makiguchi was not only a teacher, he was also a published academic, specializing in education and geography.
His first major work is the Geography of Human Life, and it's about our relationship with our surroundings and with other people. The Japanese people at this point, as they're entering into the world community over the course of the second half of the 19th century and into the 20th century, he's urging them, be connected to the rest of the world. create connections of commerce and, by implication, connections of culture.
However, at the turn of the century, Japan was emerging as an imperial power. Victory in war with China brought its first colony in Taiwan, while triumph over Russia secured rights in southern Manchuria and paved the way for Korea's annexation in 1910.
世界の強国に肩を並べれたというふうな自負をみんな持つようになるわけですね。
But Japan faced a severe economic downturn in the 1920s as global demand for its main export, silk, collapsed. The Great Depression of 1929 further compounded the crisis, plunging urban and rural populations into poverty. Against this backdrop, expansionists advanced the narrative that securing control over Manchuria was Japan's lifeline.
It was clear that Japan was moving in a dangerous direction.
In 1931, without government approval, the military invaded Manchuria under a false pretext and caused brutal devastation. Foreign Minister of Japan, Kijuro Shidehara, urged diplomacy but was powerless. He was dismissed as weak by the media, which hailed the invasion as heroic.
軍人たちはですね、統帥権という、つまり軍人というのは政権に帰属するのではなくて直接天皇にその帰属するんだ。天皇を持ち出すことによって自分たちの利害というものを貫徹していこうとする、そういう論理が起こってくる。
In 1932, Japan established the puppet state of Manchukuo. Behind a facade of independence, Japan controlled its politics, economy, and military. The colonization of Manchuria diplomatically isolated Japan and intensified the conflict with China, setting the stage for a wider war.
満州国ができるとですね、中国はそれを非常に批判しますし、国連もやっぱりリットンという人をリーダーする調査団を派遣するんですね。
We found that the Japanese occupation of this large part of China was not justified on the ground of self-defense.
日本を非難するような決議が行われてくる。で、それに対してやっぱり日本は国際連盟を脱退するという手段に出るわけですね。
Japan, however, finds it impossible to accept the report adopted by the Assembly.
In 1937, a local skirmish between Japanese and Chinese forces in northern China developed into an all-out war.
彼らからすればその日本っていうのはもう完全にもう侵略者ですから、日本に対してその徹底的に抗戦する構えを見せる。うまくいった中は別として、とにかく日本軍は勝っても無敵なんだということを新聞でラジオでしていく。私の父が実はその時に中国で戦争してるんですけれども、日本っていうのはもう子供の頃から神の国であって決して破れない国であって永遠に繁栄を続けるなんて、それはもう完全にもう刷り込まれちゃってるわけですね。
The aggressive patriotism troubled Makiguchi, who warned, "Individual happiness is unthinkable without a concern for society. In the same way, the flourishing of society is unthinkable if the happiness of the individual is disregarded." Makiguchi's life had taken an unexpected turn in 1928, when he converted to Nichiren Buddhism at the age of 57.
I think it was the sense of crisis in Japanese society that actually motivated his conversion to Nichiren Buddhism.
Nichiren was a 13th century monk who taught that all people possess what he called Buddha nature, or inherent dignity, and the capacity for happiness.
For Makiguchi, he picked up a message of empowerment from that people can release their highest potential through the practice of Nichiren Buddhism.
一人一人がかけがえのない命を持っている。 でそしてそれはこの世界を超えるようなもっと尊いものにその命がつながっていくんだ。でそれを表すことによってその一人一人は変わることができるし、その変わっていく連鎖の中で社会をその変えていくことができるというのがやっぱり法華経の立場であって、そこにその牧口は私は共鳴したというふうに考えています。
Core message of Nichiren Buddhism is that a Buddha nature exists in all people, and that all people have an unlimited potential that they can realize. That, for Makiguchi, I think really resonated with what he was trying to do through education and through all of his other endeavors.
While serving as a school principal, Makiguchi worked tirelessly on his magnum opus.
At this point, he had developed a strong collaboration with Josei Toda. Toda was also a teacher, then began his own private school. The two of them would talk education on a daily basis. Makiguchi was just an incredible note taker, and he had this mountain of notes. He was too busy to do the editing himself. Toda said, let me take this work over for you. And also Toda's business was quite successful, and he said, let me handle the economic side of this. Toda says, what is the essence of your educational philosophy? And Makiguchi responds, he says, it's value creation. Creation of value in Japanese is kachi sozo. Toda says, okay, let's make that Soka Kyoiku, literally creating value education. That became the title of the book.
On November 18, 1930, their joint efforts came to fruition with the publication of The System of Value-Creating Pedagogy. Makiguchi came to realize that what was needed to achieve his goals was a grassroots movement that could relieve the suffering of ordinary people. This was the genesis of the Soka Gakkai, or Value Creating Education Society.
The organization began primarily constituted of fellow educators. Over time, it shifted toward a more religious outlook, more focused on promotion of Nichiren Buddhism and the practice of Nichiren Buddhism.
In 1932, Makiguchi retired from teaching at the age of 60. From then on, he dedicated his time to traversing the breadth of Japan, spreading his message, and promoting the humanistic philosophy of Nichiren Buddhism.
They're holding what are called discussion meetings to share their experience. I began practicing Buddhism, and this is how my life changed. He wanted people to trust their own experience, sharing amongst each other. What are the experiences of practicing Buddhism? Makiguchi always focused on the realities of daily life. The whole gamut of the issues of daily life were things that motivated people to join the Soka Gakkai. And of course, these are amplified by the social conditions of a country getting more enmeshed in war.
The outbreak of World War II gave Japan's leaders a perfect opportunity to seize Western colonies in Asia, while Europe was tied down in fighting. In 1940, Japan signed the Tripartite Pact with Germany and Italy and occupied French Indochina, threatening U.S., British, and Dutch colonies in Asia. It was a prelude to a major confrontation. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked the key U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor.
絶対勝てない。だってアメリカと日本比べてみて生産力の差が10倍以上あるんですよね。ただこれについても軍部もやっぱり分かってるはずなんだけれども、日本のその精神力でもって戦えばアメリカは最初に負ければ必ず値を上げるという非常にこう楽観論ですよね。根拠のない。
国民が一切を挙げて国に報い国に準ずるの時は今であります。
As Japan descended into a total war with the Allied powers, the myth of the emperor as a living deity was heavily leveraged to mobilize the entire Japanese nation to serve what they called a holy war.
戦争が始まって子どもたちに対して天皇のためにその命を捧げるためにこの日本に生まれたんだということをはっきりと言うようになるわけですね。基本的に牧口というのはですね、天皇の権威というのは究極の権威ではないというはっきりとしたその立場を持っていて、これは非常に私は珍しい立場だったと思いますね。
I think that Makiguchi was trying to empower people so that they were harder to manipulate. The Japanese system of education, public information, the Japanese media, all of the institutions of the public information sphere in Japan, particularly by the 1930s and 40s, are all oriented toward getting people enthused about the war effort. He was really trying to fortify people against that so that they could see things clearly. That becomes more and more difficult the deeper the crisis that the society is enmeshed in.
戦火が拡大するに従って言論信仰に対する強力な干渉が始まってくるわけですね。天皇とその違うような信仰体系を持ったようなその宗教っていうのは徹底的に排除されて、それを信仰すれば非国民だというふうに言われる。戦争が激しくなってくると全国民に対して伊勢の大麻紙札を配るんですね。国民全員が強制的に受けなければいけない。大半の人は全く疑問を持たずに皇室のその祖先神であるアマテラスをその紙札というものを受けていたわけですけれども、牧口はそれを拒否するわけですね。
The idea of accepting this symbol connected to the divinity of the emperor and connected to this war effort was something he would never accept.
権力にとってはその紙札を受けさせるということが良心を屈服させる最大の手段なわけですね。相手を屈服させるにはやっぱり相手の良心というものをやっぱり心を打ち砕かなければいけない。そのためにやっぱり違う宗教を強制的に保たせるっていうのは最も有効なその手段なわけですね。
The thought control that was being implemented at that time became stricter and stricter. The special hire police, who were basically the thought police, they were in charge of seeing who was promoting ideas that really ran counter to the government orthodoxy, to arrest anyone who's speaking out against the imperial system, against private property.
By August 1942, Soka Gakkai membership had grown to 3,000 members. Makiguchi's study sessions started to attract a new type of audience, Japan's much-feared tokko, or special hire police. They would interrupt Makiguchi's lectures, repeatedly shouting at him to stop.
In July of 1943, he and Toda were arrested by the secret thought police.
警察関係初めてでございましたんでね、家族みんな驚きました。あんまりにもね、横暴な態度でテーブルの上に足を上げましてね、私の一言でどうでも自由になるってそういうことをねおっしゃって。
Locked up in Sugamo prison, Makiguchi was subjected to grueling interrogations.
The record of his interrogation has survived, and he's very clear he does not compromise his beliefs at all, and explained his understanding of Nichiren Buddhism and why it was incompatible with the belief structures that the state was trying to impose on people. Even under interrogation, he says, the emperor is a common mortal. He is not infallible. It's really hard to appreciate how blasphemous that was. Some 20 leaders of the Soka Gakkai were arrested. They virtually all compromised. They denounced Makiguchi, they denounced the Soka Gakkai. Toda and Makiguchi were virtually the only two to remain to the very end.
The Empire of Japan was losing one battle after another and facing its final days.
By the end of the war, the calorie allotment to people through food rations was extremely limited, and people in prison were basically about half that. The conditions were very harsh.
Isolated and malnourished, Makiguchi, now over 70, saw his health deteriorate rapidly.
Makiguchi was allowed one letter every 10 days. He communicated principally with his daughter-in-law.
自分がこういう中にいてもね、心次第で本当に地獄も極楽ねだっていうことを思いなされて、そのお手紙の中に書いていらっしゃいますが、私は心打たれましたね。
In his last letter, he writes and he says, I feel humbled by the fact that I have been able to develop a philosophy that eluded the efforts of the great philosophers of the past.
Further, I have been able to link this to a faith in the Lotus Sutra, and now can see the actual proof of several thousand people who put this into practice. I must admit my own astonishment at this achievement. On November 18th, 1944, Makiguchi passed away in Sugamo prison at the age of 73.
素晴らしいご様子でしたね。父は死を直前まで私にいろんな意味でね教えてくださったんだ。感謝してます。
I think that he died happy. These are my personal views, but I think that knowing that Toda would carry on his work and that it would continue to live on in society.
I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
The war ended in August 1945. In the ensuing occupation, Japan democratized. The emperor proclaimed himself immortal. Shinto was no longer the state religion. In the new political climate, Makiguchi's ideas were free to flourish.
Makiguchi died in November. It's not until January of 45 that Toda is informed, and he describes being just devastated. Over the course of his life, he committed to avenging that death against attitudes that lead to the suppression of people, the violation of human rights.
In the years following Makiguchi's passing, Toda reconstructed the Soka Gakkai, renaming it the Soka Gakkai.
思想家として学者として非常に高い評価を受けて、最近になって再評価されるようなところがあるんですけど、もし牧口のユニークさというのは下からの視点ですよね。一番小さいところから人間と自然との関わりというものにその着目して、それがどういうふうに人々の生活に影響を与えるのか、そこから立ち上がってくる思想ですね。そこに牧口の持っているユニークさがあると言えるのではないかと思います。
If I could give just one word for Makiguchi's sort of whole program, his geographic studies, his work as an elementary school principal, as a leader of a Buddhist movement, the term I would use is empowerment. That you can change your relationship with your environment. You can create a better, more empowered relationship with your environment, not led by priests. Ordinary people coming together, sharing their experiences, and creating a network of people mutually supporting each other. He was a filter to take the medieval worldview of Nichiren, pull out its essence, and push that through a filter of modern philosophy and ways of thinking, without which it would not have become accessible to the Japanese people of the post-war period or to people in countries where Soka Gakkai Buddhism is being practiced.
Makiguchi's vision is still being put into practice today, empowering people across 192 countries and territories around the world. Tsunesaburo Makiguchi planted the seeds of a movement rooted in the belief that ordinary people, empowered by faith, can transform the world. His universal insights and unyielding determination continue to inspire us today.